We're continuing with Chapter 30 of Burying the Boys, the CIA, the Mob, and America's Secret History by Daniel Hopsicker. Hopsicker. Alvin of Arabia. It's Bugsy Seal who's credited with the first envisioning Las Vegas as a gambling mecca, but Meyer Lansky was the money behind the dream. Bespectacled and known for operating quietly behind the scenes, Lansky took on legendary status in underworld lore, earning a place in the books and movies and even a citation in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Described in newspaper headlines as chairman of the board and financial wizard of the underworld, Lansky opened gambling operations in South Florida after World War II, controlling casinos from Cuba to Vegas. He was even in The Godfather. Remember Hyman Roth? Richard Benveniste's close associate, Alvin Malnick, was Meyer Lansky's attorney. When Lansky died in 1983 at age 81, Reader's Digest named Malnick his heir apparent, and the moniker stuck. Malnick has by now been called Meyer Lansky's heir apparent so often in print that it must feel like part of his job title. It was a well-known fact among the criminal underworld that dealing with Al Malnick was the same as dealing with Meyer Lansky, said Vincent Teresa, convicted criminal and government witness to investigators for New Jersey Gambling Commission. Alvin Malnick's circle of acquaintances is perfectly illustrated in his role of director of Bank of World Commerce and Bahamas-based institution involving some of the nation's top gangsters. The New Jersey report said millions of dollars passed through the door and was reinvested in syndicate-controlled projects in the United States. But gangsters weren't all the bank was about. The Bank of World Commerce was the brainchild of CIA Colonel Paul Helliwell. Mob money flowed into its secret numbered accounts by the hundreds of millions. Lansky's money, most of it, and then out again to the International Credit Bank of Switzerland before returning to the U.S. for reinvestment. Paul Helliwell, the CIA's paymaster at the Bay of Pigs, was also, we were soon to learn, the true owner of Barry Seal's Learjet. Malnick had, in the early 1970s, invested in the Cricket Club, a Miami high-rise with 22 condos and a frequent hangout of Barry Seal's while in Miami, where he also ate often at Malnick-owned Forge restaurant. The club's developer, no doubt by coincidence, had been convicted with Teamster Jimmy Hoffa on fraud and conspiracy charges in 1964. Blackie had told us one of the SEAL organization's investors was the Central State Teamsters Pension Fund, but then many of the Teamsters Fund borrowers were associates of organized crime. $5.4 million, for example, was loaned to Alvin Malnick. Malnick had connections to George Bush as well, according to the book Blue Thunder. Bush even bought from Malnick associate Don Aronow, one of his signature cigarette boats, the top choice of offshore smugglers. After Aronow was murdered, published accounts stated he had been a drug smuggler and money launderer linked to Genovese Purple Gang of New York within the framework of the Meyer Lansky organized crime syndicate. Aronow numbered among his friends public figures and celebrities like the head of the smugglers' airline, Eastern chairman Frank Borman, savings and loan scandal poster boy Charles Keating, and Alvin Malnick, all exalted acquaintances suggestive of intelligence connections as well. Because Seal's lawyer Richard Benveniste was such a close associate of Alvin Malnick, we wanted to get an idea of what he'd been up to in the past several decades, and we didn't have to look very far in the newspaper archives to find evidence of his enormous influence. The club's location inside the Venerable Forge restaurant was meant to recall old Cuba, and in that it succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams, said a Miami News Times profile September 16, 1999. After all, the Forge is owned by Alvin Malnick, a man considered by federal law enforcement officials to be a major organized crime figure and, as former Miami Beach Police Chief Rocky Palmers put it, Meyer Lansky's fair-haired boy. Richard Benveniste's chum Al Malnick, we discovered, is so powerful that he found a way to legalize loan sharking. He is Mr. Payday Loan, according to the Nashville Tennessean, April 18, 1999. The shadow of organized crime has descended on Tennessee's political landscape via campaign contributions from the operator of a string of Georgia-based auto title loan companies, the Tennessean has learned. The owner of Tennessee companies that loan money at almost 800% annual interest are kept secret from the public under the controversial payday loan law passed here earlier this year. In Florida, federal investigators have found organized crime figures infected one such Miami area business, threatening to harm borrowers if they do not repay loans and interest. The shadow of organized crime referred to is Alvin Malnick, and making money off the poor, as anyone who's watched The Sopranos knows, is what mobsters do. According to a federal court indictment, members of the New York-based Gambino crime family found such an opportunity in Deerfield Beach, Florida. At Easy Check Cashing, a storefront business extended large short-term loans similar to those made by payday loan companies in Tennessee. The Tennessean article said, adding, the last thing needed by consumers who have exhausted all avenues to credit is to turn to businesses that offer loans at triple-digit interest, bankruptcy officials said. These are predators, stated one official. 9 men, including John Gotti's successor, were charged with extortion for their easy loans, as well as conspiracy to kidnap, murder, and commit arson. Neither the public nor Tennessee law enforcement authorities have been right to learn who operates similar cash advance companies here, the article continued. By law, those records are kept secret at the State Department of Financial Institutions. I'm just shocked, said State Senator Roscoe Dixon, Democrat of Memphis. Senator Roscoe's being shocked reminds us of the bit in the movie Casablanca where Lieutenant Renaud pockets his roulette winnings while simultaneously telling Bogey Rick that he's shocked that gambling is taking place on their premises. Several years ago, at the ripe age of 61, Malnick found it necessary to marry a young model 36 years his junior. Theirs became one of the lavish weddings that society columnists like the Miami Herald's John Felickman loved to gush about. Wedding bells for Alvin Malnick, attorney millionaire, restaurateur, long-divorced world traveler, wine connoisseur, car collector, financier of Arabian horses, survivor of assorted federal mob investigators, a guy who really knows his way around. Malnick, 61, will marry Nancy Gresham, 25, a one-time model for Atlanta, in a lavish black tie bash Saturday night at the private Malnick compound at Boca Raton, she wrote. The nuptials took place at the Malnick family ranch in Boca Raton, which was Miss Fleshyman noted gleefully, more Hefner mansion than Little House on the Prairie. The 288 guests had cocktails nibbed on salmon and bagula and compared wedding notes in the sprawling patio area, which featured a meandering swimming pool, grill, center, and kitchen, plus cute little fully stocked townhouses for overnight guests. The guest list reads like a who's who of certain stratum of American life. Among the invitees were, but of course, Richard Benveniste, as well as F. Lee Bailey, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Deborah Winger, designer Nicole Miller, Manhattan real estate mogul Hank Sofer, LA restaurant Nikki Blair, gangster rap Natch record producer Russell Simmons, Rebecca Grayhart, co-host of a Steven Spielberg TV show, Carol Connors, who wrote Gonna Fly Now, the theme song from Rocky, Darian Iacocca, wife number 3 of former Chrysler chairman Lee Iacocca, Paul Pope, whose dad, the late Generoso Pope, owned the National Enquirer, and mob associate and casino czar Clifford Perlman. The list, as they say, goes on. Worth noting was actor Gianni Russo, who, in a bit of unintended irony, which the Miami Herald reported straight-faced, had played Al Pacino's bookie brother-in-law Carlo Rizzini in The Godfather. Also in attendance was Robert Lacey, author of Little Man, Meyer Lansky, and The Gangster Life, in which the name Malnick hadn't even appeared. Presumably Malnick was now returning Lacey's favor by inviting him to the wedding of the year, because although Malnick's yellow Rolls Royce was once bombed in Miami Beach, he keeps up appearances by denying he even knew Lansky, except for once by chance in an elevator. Alvin the groom presented his bride with the ultimate wedding gift of choice. We learned the 50-carat emerald and diamond necklace. Then we were surprised to read that there had been a table at Malnick's nuptials reserved for Saudi Arabian sheiks, that St. Louis-born Alvin, who's Jewish, had a son who's changed his name to Sharif and married a woman from the Saudi royal family, not previously known by us at least as being cozy with Jewish mobsters. They met 2 years ago at a party and fell in love, said Sharif. Malnick, 37, the groom's son and best man. She's very beautiful. The story, as we pieced it together, was incredible. Incredible, but true. Malnick had befriended a Saudi family in the early 80s, the Al-Fisi Tarek family from Saudi Arabia. Various newspapers accounts reported this set of dim memory for us, since this family, the Al-Fasis, had scandalized blasé Beverly Hills while we lived nearby. After arriving with an entourage of bodyguards, cooks, and other servants, the family had purchased a highly visible $2.4 million estate right on Sunset Boulevard in Beverly Hills. They then began renovating, placing anatomically correct flesh-colored Roman statues on the wall, complete with painted-on black pubic hair. Gawkers were lining up all day. The house quickly became the talk of the town. Some in the clannish enclave were clearly not amused. The mansion was in short order burned down by arsonists. For those of us living in LA at the time, as far as we knew, that had been the end of the Saudi scandal. But there was, we now learned with mounting excitement, much more to the story. When the Al-Fasis left L.A., they had continued roaming the world, spending spectacular sums of brother-in-law Saudi royal Prince Turkey's money on lavish parties, chartered jets, hotel suites by the floor, automobiles by the fleet, clothing by the rack, and jewelry by the tray. They had soon joined the prince in Europe, where they became involved with the increasingly ubiquitous Alvin Malnick, settling down for 6 months at the Intercontinental Hotel in Geneva, where the prince distributed bundles of cash to his insatiable entourage. Malnick and Prince Turki, the son of the founder of modern Saudi Arabia, King Abdul Aziz, had grown chummy as a friend of the prince, told People magazine. The prince trusted and respected Al so much that slowly the power shifted to Al. It was Al who controlled the cash, who told the prince to put money in his business or that business. Then, as if the idea of a Jewish mobster from Miami controlling the cash of a Saudi royal prince isn't bizarre enough, Malnik's son Mark, a 23-year-old student, fell in love with Sheikh Al Fasi's sister. It hardly mattered that a Mrs. Mark Malnik waited for him in Florida, sniffed People magazine. It certainly didn't matter to Al Fasi's, whose romantic permutations were already complicated enough to befuddle even the most attentive scorekeeper. So Alvin Malnik's son, Mark, a young Jewish married man, was now in full pursuit of Saudi Prince Turki's sister-in-law. In his new role as advisor and confidant to the prince, Malnik devised a solution. Al came up with a good idea, said People's Mag anonymous source. Come to the U.S., he said. I'll take care of everything. Once in Miami, Malnik soon assumed control over the prince's schedule and contacts. Prince Turki created a 2-story apartment in Malnik's North Miami condominium, the Cricket Club, directly below Alvin's penthouse. Soon the entourage was engaging in protective services of half the off-duty police force of nearby Hollywood, Florida. Under Malnik's tutelage, Prince Turki paid $3 million in cash for the Woodworth estate, one of the most graceful waterfront homes on the Florida Gold Coast. Then the Al Fasi clan also paid an inflated $1.5 million for 2 waterfront homes between Miami Beach and the city of Miami. Then, showing that their taste had not improved since leaving Beverly Hills, they demolished the house to erect what people called the Xanadu of Kitish, and which one of the contractors described as the biggest hunk of crap ever built on the face of the earth. In all, Al Fasi would pay $17 million for the house and other properties, and the Malniks, father and son, were now beginning to study Arabic. Young Mark took to carrying the Koran around with him. Then a devastating blow struck the Saudi prince and his entourage. Miami police, acting on a complaint that servants were being held as slaves, stormed the cricket club sanctuary, but the cops never got a chance to carry out their search. One of the princes began shouting very unroyal obscenities at them, biting a policewoman deep enough to leave tooth marks for days. Family bodyguards quickly came to a rescue. A standoff ensued, and startled police were forced to retreat. As suits and countersuits began to fly between Saudi Prince Turki and an outraged Florida state attorney, the U.S. State Department rushed in a former ambassador to Saudi Arabia to serve as intermediary. He secured face-saving diplomatic immunity for the prince. Then the prince's brother-in-law, Al Fasi, offered to sell a stolen $1.2 million emerald and diamond ring to an undercover FBI agent. He did not have diplomatic immunity and was charged with interstate and international transportation of stolen goods, a felony punishable by a maximum of 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. The lucky sheik had at least a well-connected lawyer, Richard Benveniste. When all this bad news reached the ear of the Saudi king back in Riyadh, he ordered the prince to enter his long exile and return home. Once at home, the prince's family circle broadened to include their friends formerly named Malnik. Both father and son were said to have taken Arabic names and converted to Islam. What pertinence does the story of attorney Alvin Malnik, heir to Meyer Lansky, converting to Islam and living in Saudi Arabia as an advisor to a member of the Saudi royal family, to have the saga of Barry and the boys? In 1982, Barry began flying weapons to the Contras from Mena, Arkansas, which had been paid for with Saudi royal money. A bit of a short one today.